To you, Vikram, is, some people know what's happening. They've been watching the news, they've been, seeing the conversations on social media, but very few people know how it all actually started. Yes. And that's where your book comes in. So I'm going to start by asking you to give us the backstory of this temple that became a mosque. How did it all begin?
Yeah. Thank you, Shiv, and it's such a coincidence that I'm talking about waiting for Shiva with Shiv a day before Mahashivratri.
Yes.
So, so the book came serendipitously. As I mentioned in the prologue also, that I was working on another one on Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan, and it was Vishnu Shankar Jain whom I met, the advocate who's fighting the case with his father, Hari Shankar Jain ji, who had this exact angst that you mentioned, that, while Ayodhya was largely in the public realm and consciousness because of the movement, while we see, the updates on the case in news channels like yours or in newspapers, I think the common people really don't know what is it we're fighting for, or what is the history of this whole conflict. Is it something that's just started now, or for thousands of years our ancestors have been trying to reclaim this space which they considered as sacred? Kashi was a place which was considered as the city where Bhagwan Shiv had himself guaranteed salvation to everyone,
right.
The Moksha Nagari. And so that's why forever, the Sanatanis always considered this place as something so sacrosanct and important, and so they never gave up on this spot. There were multiple waves of iconoclasm. In 1194, you had Qutubuddin Aibak first demolishing all the temples, including the Vishwanath temple there. Then Razia Sultan got a mosque built there in 1236.
Right.
And then the Khiljis, the Jaunpur Sharki Nawabs, and Sikandar Lodi, who had a large-scale demolition of temples in Kashi, including the Vishwanath Mandir. And of course the final axe was by Aurangzeb in 1669. But despite this long tumultuous history, shrines fell, shrines rose, but the Hindus of Kashi never gave up. So, and this is the interesting story, the history of this place,
right,
where it is a story of resilience in the face of all odds, and also a resilience that was not limited only to today's Uttar Pradesh or North India. The whole of India, there was this consciousness, and today it becomes more opportune to talk that when, we are being divided as into North and South India, and that we are not even a nation.
Indeed.
Every day all kinds of loony statements like this come. So 1194 Qutubuddin Aibak demolishes it. Within a few decades, in 1212, the first pillar that is erected there in the heart of Kashi, which says this is the city of Vishweshwar, is by a Eastern Indian Bengal ruler, Vishwarupa of the Sena dynasty.
Right.
Few decades later, you had a Gujarati businessman, Seth Vastupal, who gives 1 lakh rupees in those days to get the magnificent temple constructed there after that. And a few decades later, from the place we come from, Karnataka, you had the Hoysala ruler, Veera Narasimha, who donates an entire village called Hebbale, so that all the proceeds of that could go to the pilgrims, so that they could pay the jizya tax to the Delhi Sultanate to go and visit Kashi.
Right.
And in his inscription, he says this is given so that all of this is my offering to the lotus feet of Vishweshwar. The Maharashtrian Brahmins, their families go and settle down there and revive that spirit of scholarship which had started, diminishing in Varanasi after the iconoclastic waves. And somebody who came in that lineage was Narayan Bhatt, who was called Jagat Guru those days. He wrote several compositions, books, including Tristhali Setu, which documented the importance of Kashi and its Mahatmyam. And he had a lot of influence, political influence too. And so he convinced Raja Todarmal. And this was the time of Akbar, who was slightly more tolerant than the other Mughal rulers. And so this, in 1580 or thereabouts, you had this big, massive Ashtamandap temple of Vishweshwar that was constructed. So exactly where the Vazukhana now is, that's where the Garbhagriha of Vishweshwar was. And at the four corners, there were 4 mandaps of various deities. And this temple of 1580 was what was demolished in 1669 by Aurangzeb. By September 1669, as recorded in the Masire Alamgiri, where the soldiers of Aurangzeb write back to him saying, as per your commandments, we have demolished all the temples, including the temple of Bishnath. And that is important to state because we just had a few weeks ago, including Irfan Habib, who went on to say, "Mandir to tode gaye, par wo Shivji ka mandir tha, wo pata nahi hai." So very clearly in Matsuri,
so this mentions Bishnath.
It is mentioned as Bishnath. So there is no two ways about it. Though subterfuge is done to open the window, saying that this is not a Shiv temple, it is some Buddhist structure and all of that.
I'm going to come to the Marxist historians and the Nehruvian consensus, which you write about in just a moment, Vikram. But the current case, like you've written extensively, and I read a large part of the book, isn't the first time that, like you just touched upon it, it's not the first time that a reclamation case has been made for the Kashi Gyanvapi.
Yeah.
Why has it been so difficult?
Well,
through the British Raj.
Through the British Raj. So the colonial records are replete with so much of material about this. So the bloody riots rock Varanasi in 1809, 1810, which are called the Lat Bhairo riots in colonial records, where the Rajputs and the Gosais in Varanasi, they managed to actually burn down the Gyanvapi Masjid and evacuate the Muslims completely. And some of the British records of that time, the collector Watson, he writes that this is a place which is very sacred for the Hindus, and the way the Aurangzeb's commanders had left the place, they could have demolished the whole structure and built a magnificent mosque, but they left the Kandahar, the western wall ruins, which we see to this day, so that it is a daily reminder to the Hindus as a symbol of humiliation and insult that your most sacred Jyotirling lies in ruins in this manner. So the Hindus never gave up. There was always altercation, and so Watson says this is such a sacred space for the Hindus, so let's give it up to them and let's evacuate the Muslims completely so that they can have their masjid at another place. It's a very routine thing to have a masjid transported, even in Islamic countries to this day, where to lay a railway line or to widen a road, masjids get transported, but a temple has a different sanctity because there's a pran pratisthit murti which sits there as per Hindu faith. So this contestation happened then, and for small reasons, people were going to court, which the people tree belongs to us, the branches, leaves are falling into our side. So the place was never given up by the Hindus. So British court records, which I quote extensively in the book, are replete with these contestations. In 1936, there was a non-representative suit where the Hindus were not made a party, called the Deen Muhammad versus the state, where 5 Muslim men actually take the British government to court, saying they are interfering with our fundamental right to worship. They wanted to worship outside the precincts of the masjid. The Alvida namaz that was happening in the last Jummah of Ramzan, they would want to go and even start worshipping in the compound, and that the British government prevented them from. So in that case, very importantly, the British government, 1936 I'm talking of, said this is not a Waqf property. There are no records to show that Aurangzeb or anyone donated it to someone. And secondly, it also said, as per Islamic law, you cannot worship at a place which is usurped from someone else, or which you have not taken consent of the other person. There is no consent paper of the Hindu side here. So it's a usurped, illegal encroachment by Aurangzeb or his commanders. So according to Islamic law, according to property documents, that was not a masjid as of 1936. So even when we say Places of Worship Act and religious character, in 1936 it was said that this is not a Waqf property. And that was upheld even in the Allahabad High Court, where the Muslim side went for an appeal in 1942, where they lost the case. But after independence, there was a lull in this thing till 1991. And that was when a new suit was filed on behalf of Adi Vishweshwar, saying, I am the owner of this entire space and I want it reclaimed. And that case hung around for 22 years in the Indian courts.